As I wrote the script for this video, the nominees for the 95th Oscars were just announced, but let's pretend for just a moment that Mr. Oscar called me up on the phone and asked me for some of my recommendations. Well, here's what I would pick. One disclaimer before I do go into my picks from the previous year. I may flub and say best, but I really do mean that these are just my favorites. Obviously, this is my personal opinion, and that's because I haven't seen everything. I'm not going to pretend I got to see every movie. Now, I think I've seen a good majority of what was available in 2022, and that's why I feel, qualified enough, or at least comfortable enough to make this list. But I haven't seen Oscar favorites like Tar, Triangle of Sadness yet. So obviously you won't be seeing those on this, but I think there's a pretty well-rounded selection of films that I chose from here. Without further ado, I'll kick off this video and my nominees and the categories, because I think this is probably going to be a pretty long one. Want to get right into it. These are my favorite performances by an actress in a supporting role. These are in no particular order, but I would like to start with some honorable mentions, ones I wanted to nominate for whatever reason, but just didn't quite make that top 5. These were Lashana Lynch from The Woman King, also Thuso Mbedu from The Woman King, and Queen Latifah in Hustle. And my actual nominees are, again, in no particular order. First, we have Angela Bassett in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. She took on an expanded role in this film that I don't think anyone would have expected her or anticipated her to have to take, but she really stepped up and really shined bright in her performance in this film. Also, Carrie Condon in The Banshees of Inisherin. She kind of has to play the straight man. She really grounds this film nicely, bouncing off of Barry Keoghan and Colin Farrell's character, and it really endears me to her throughout this whole film. Next is Hong Chow in The Whale. Of course, I knew about all the buzz for Brendan Fraser's performance going into this. What I wasn't expecting was for Hong Chow to match him at every point in just what she was bringing to this film. My next nominee is Stephanie Hsu in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. This is a performance that could have easily gone into the cringe-worthy category. In fact, it probably starts there. And the fact that she's able to dig herself out and really be the emotional heart in a lot of ways of this film just says volumes about her performance. And my final nominee is Vanessa Berghardt in a film called Cha Cha Real Smooth. Now, this movie, I didn't even like it. In fact, I found most of it to be completely insufferable. However, the fact that Vanessa Berghardt was able to make me care about her character and her character alone is why she's ended up on this list. So overall, in this category, I have 4 out of 5 nominees in common with the Academy, actually. And my winner is going to be Carrie Condon for The Banshees of Inisherin.
Was you never wild?
Wild? Was I never wild? I don't know what you're talking about, Dominic. Wild how? Angry? 'Cause I'm getting angry now, I can tell you.
Not angry, wild.
You just keep saying wild, Dominic.
Wild?
My brother told you, didn't he, that you'd be out on the road if you started talking stupid to me.
He said creepy, not stupid.
Well, you failed on both counts, haven't you?
I've...
The next category I'll be getting into is my favorite performance by an actor in a supporting role. First off, some honorable mentions. We have Tenoch Huerta Mejia in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Colin Farrell in The Batman. What a great year for Colin Farrell. And Ethan Hawke in Raymond and Ray. And my nominees are Ke Huy Quan in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I'm going to be upfront with you. I'm announcing this one first. He wins. He just wins. Everyone else is playing for second. He could win for the Golden Globe speech alone. He is just so perfect in this film. I cannot say enough amazing things about what he is able to do here. It is so nice. Every time he is on screen, it is so nice to see him. My next nominee, because I still need 5. It can't just be Ke Huy Quan 5 times in a row. My next nominee is Anthony Hopkins in a film called Armageddon Time. Really sad this movie didn't get more awards attention. I think Hopkins was really spectacular in this, along with my next nominee, Jeremy Strong in Armageddon Time. Probably my runner-up behind Ke Huy Quan, even though there's quite a big gap there. He has some really interesting moments in this for me. This character risks being, one note, one dimensional, kind of, a stereotypical dad performance, but he brings some really interesting moments into this movie that really redeems this whole character and kind of the whole movie for me. Next is Barry Keoghan in The Banshees of Inisherin, another character that kind of zigs in a really interesting way when you think it's going to zag. Keoghan played this character in a way that almost makes me excited to see him play the Joker. I was not when I first heard that announcement. I was not when I saw him in the film. But just based off how strong his performance in Banshees of Inisherin was, I'm kind of interested to see what he does next. And finally, Brendan Gleeson in The Banshees of Inisherin. It feels weird to have, two nominees from Armageddon Time, two nominees from The Banshees of Inisherin. But if it's warranted, it's warranted. Both of these films have amazing supporting casts. When it's right, it's right. And Brendan Gleeson in this film is just right. He has earned his place on this list. In this category, I have 3 in common with the Oscars. Of course, the non-Armageddon Time 3. And my winner, I already said it. It's no surprise. Why am I pausing? It's Ke Huy Quan for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
I don't know. The only thing I do know is that we have to be kind. Please, be kind. Especially when we don't know what's going on.
我理解，但你不是一个服输的人。我又何尝不是？只是我们选择的处理方式不一样。
Now moving on to some non-acting categories. These are my nominees for my favorite screenplay. First off is Glass Onion, written by Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson, say what you want about him, has done it again. He has once again subverted our expectations and actually made a pretty good movie this time. Next is The Whale, written by Samuel D. Hunter. A small story, nothing on a grand scale, but a really impactful, a really powerful one. Glad to see translated from the stage to the screen. Next is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Obviously, one of the most unique films this year. I think it's the one that has everybody buzzing, and there's a reason for that. It's really creative, really special. If I didn't mention it, this is written by the Daniels, Daniel Scheinert, and Daniel Kwan. Next is White Noise, written by Don DeLillo and Noah Baumbach. This one's really a slow burn for me personally. It kind of took a while for me to warm up to it. It took multiple viewings, but through those multiple viewings, I've really come to appreciate what both of these guys, Noah Baumbach, was trying to do in this movie, and I really enjoy it now. And finally, 3,000 Years of Longing. I watched this a little later into the year, and I really wish I had caught it when it was in theaters. I think this was a really interesting story. This film is about stories. How could it not be nominated for Best Screenplay? And of course, this is written by George Miller. So even though there's 10 nominees for the Oscars in this, I only have 2 in common with them, those being Glass Onion and Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. My winner for my favorite screenplay of the year goes to Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Next, here are my nominees for Favorite Original Song. YouTube is really good at taking down videos for playing copyrighted music, so I'm going to recommend you check out these songs later. I probably won't be playing any clips, or at least I'll try not to. If I do play a clip, it's probably going to have to be edited out later anyway. So here are my nominees. Dosti from RRR. Of course, the Oscars also nominated a song from RRR. They nominated Naatu Naatu, a fantastic performance, but based on just the song alone, I actually prefer Dosti. Next is In Love from Intergalactic, performed by Kid Cudi. This I didn't see till much later in the year, and yet, even though I first listened to this in December, it was on all of my Wrapped near the top. Like, I listened to the heck out of this song. The scene it's in the movie is probably my favorite scene in the movie. In Love. My next nominee is This Is a Life from Everything Everywhere All at Once, performed by Mitski. This is my only nominee that doesn't appear, I think the word is diegetically, maybe I don't know. It doesn't appear in the film, it appears over the credits, and yet it had me bawling probably more than any of the others did, just because of where it came in the film, the end, and what impact it had. This was my most listened to song of last year. Next nominee I have is Ciao Papa from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, as performed by Gregory Mann in the film. This is one I was really, really surprised. Probably one of, I guess, the bigger snubs, even though it's in the song category. Probably one of the bigger snubs from the Oscars. Really surprised to not only not see this song nominated for an Oscar, but any songs from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And finally, my last nominee in this category is Lend Me Your Voice from Belle. Honestly, could have put any song from Belle on here. Yes, I know it came out last year, but it came out, its U.S. release date was in 2022. It will be perfectly eligible for my favorites of last year. Of course, you can listen to the Kylie McNeil version or Kaho Nakamura, depending if you're listening to dub or sub. In my opinion, it doesn't matter because they're both brilliant. So I do only have This Is a Life in common with the Oscars. However, it's the one I'm picking, so I guess they got something right. So going back to performances, this is a category I'd like to recognize that the Academy does not currently. These are my nominees for favorite voice acting performance. My honorable mentions are going to go out to Isabella Rossellini in Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Peter Sohn in Lightyear, and Jared Harris in The Sea Beast. And here are my actual nominees for favorite voice acting performance. First off, we have Jenny Slate in Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This is a no-brainer for me. If this category did exist, I am almost certain she would appear on it. Jenny Shell. Yeah, just change her name to Jenny Shell. Jenny Slate brings this shell to life. Next is Harvey Guillen in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This is my most recent addition to the list, period. I had 5 nominees even as I was writing this script out, and at the last minute, I had to give it to Harvey Guillen. That character, his performance, really brought something I wasn't expecting. Probably the most unexpected thing in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish for me was that character and him performing that character. My next nominee is another DreamWorks Pictures character. This is Sam Rockwell in The Bad Guys. Just like Sam Rockwell, he's just so instantly captivating, instantly charming the moment his character is introduced. He never lets go of that. Just fantastic. So glad he got this role. My penultimate nominee in this category is John Mulaney, not for Puss in Boots, though, actually for Chippendale Rescue Rangers. I know a lot of people liked him in Puss in Boots. I think he was good. I think he was fun. I think he was fine in that role. But where I really think he excelled is in Chippendale. He brought the perfect amount of dry humor to counteract Andy Samberg's zaniness in this. Truly cannot imagine the film without him in it. And finally, for my last nominee, I know it's kind of cheating, but whatever, it's my show. It's kind of a dual nomination. Both Kaho Nakamura and Kylie McNeil for their role as Belle in both the original Japanese and English dub versions of the movie. I think the English dub team did a really fantastic job picking somebody to match what was already an amazing performance in Kaho Nakamura. I did originally watch this movie in theaters in Japanese, but I've since listened to basically all the music and certain clips exclusively in English. And so I feel like this dual nomination is justified. Since this category doesn't actually exist, I don't have any in common with the Academy, or I have all of them in common with the Academy. I guess I get to choose the undisputed winner for this one, and it is going to go to the unprecedented dual win for Kaho Nakamura and Kylie McNeil for Belle.
ラブソングなんて作ったことないけど。ラララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララララ Sticking with animation for a bit longer, I'd like to do my nominees for favorite animated feature next. First off, some honorable mentions. I'm not quite sure where to include animation, live action, hybrid movies. I'm just going to name them here. Just know, if I was able to include them on, the live action side or the animation side strictly, they'd probably be making one of those lists. But because they kind of blend both, there's not really a place for them on either. Of course, those were Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, directed by Akiva Schaffer. So unfortunately, they're relegated to the honorable mentions section. One more honorable mention for this category is just missing the cut, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, directed by Joel Crawford. And my nominees are Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood, directed by Richard Linklater. I'll admit I'm a little partial to this film since NASA's just down the road from me. Even still, I think this is a great watch. I watched this film originally with a group of friends from Florida, and it seemed they were just as interested in the subject matter as I would. I think this is a great film that kind of went under the radar last year. My next nominee is The Bad Guys, directed by Pierre Perifel. Definitely got that wrong. Sorry, Pierre. I know everybody is kind of enamored with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and rightfully so, but I still think The Bad Guys kind of did it better from DreamWorks this year. They kind of had more swagger, more style. I don't know. They maybe didn't have the heart or the character history that Puss in Boots did, but I just had a great time watching this. I think DreamWorks Animation had a really great year. I hope they keep it up. My next nominee is Intergalactic, directed by Fletcher Moles. You can argue if this is a movie or not, if it's like extended music video. I don't really care. I thought it was really engaging. Turns out you just have to put a Spider-Verse shader over a film, and I'm going to absolutely love it. My next nominee is Belle, directed by Mamoru Hosoda. I think this is Hosoda's best work yet, and that is saying something. I kind of got to catch up with his work a lot through last year. I think it's really fantastic. I loved watching Digimon the movie again, so saying that Belle's his best work is really speaking volumes. My next nominee is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, directed by Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson. Just truly a mastercraft. I'm going to leave it at that. It is a work of art. I would be remiss if it didn't appear on this list. So in this category, I just have GDT's Pinocchio in common with the Oscars. My winner is actually going to be Intergalactic, directed by Fletcher Moles.
Give you a ride home?
You drove? You gonna ride that to valet?
Ha. Funny. Nah, get on.
You know, I came here in a Maybach.
Yeah, and you're leaving on a mongoose. Unless you don't want to ruin that little cocktail dress of yours. What is that, anyway? Prada?
It's Valentino, and don't try and play me.
My next category is a big performance one. It is my favorite performance by an actress in a leading role. And my first honorable mentions are two. My only honorable mentions. They're to Elizabeth Olsen in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Tilda Swinton in 3,000 Years of Longing, and Keke Palmer in Nope. And my nominees are Michelle Yeoh in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Funny inside baseball thing. This was actually the first category that I wrote. Even though I wrote it first, I wanted to put it later in the video. So the only thing I've written here is spoiler alert. You'll be hearing this movie's name a lot. Well, considering I put it at the end of the video, you already have heard this movie's name a lot for very good reason. Michelle Yeoh is very much one of those reasons. My next nominee is Aubrey Plaza in Emily the Criminal, a small movie not a ton of people saw. I think it would have fallen completely flat without her. As it is, I think it's pretty engaging. I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's on Netflix. Go check it out if you haven't. Emily the Criminal. My next nominee is Margot Robbie in Babylon. Now, I wasn't the absolute biggest fan of Babylon, but I have to say Robbie stole every scene that she was in with a really, really exciting performance. Kind of had to put her on this list somewhere. My next nominee is Viola Davis in The Woman King. Probably, in my opinion, the single biggest Oscar snub this year. I think if there's any lesser actress in this role, this movie just doesn't work. There is a ton on her shoulders here. She carries it all with the strength befitting a king. And finally, my last nominee in this category is Tang Wei in Decision to Leave. Saw this film very recently and knew I had to keep her on this list. Her character had me guessing through the entire film, all the way up until the very end. A lot of that is just through her, facial expressions, the way she plays this character. Tang Wei. I only have one in common with the Oscars in this category, which is really surprising considering the strength of these performances. I guess it just goes to show that there were a lot of strong female leading characters this year, which is nice to see. My winner is the one that got away from the Oscars, in my opinion, Viola Davis in The Woman King.
It is me. It is the girl who was silenced in those shackles by those men. I've hidden her away. I have denied her pain. But I'm going to hear her now. I have to try to save her.
All right, this is the last of the acting categories. These are my nominees for my favorite performance by an actor in a leading role. Probably the toughest category for me to parse out this year. There were so many strong ones. First off, some honorable mentions go out to Colin Farrell in The Banshees of Inisherin, Idris Elba in 3,000 Years of Longing, and Banks Repeta in Armageddon Time. And here are my nominees. Now, my first two nominees are from the same film. No, this is not a joint nomination like I did for Belle. I just think it's easier to talk about them both at the same time. They both played very similar but very critical, equally critical roles in this film. I'm nominating both NTR and Ram Charan for their performance in RRR. Both of these actors gave nothing less than 100% in every scene that they were in. It is on the backs of these two actors that this film became an international phenomenon, deservingly so. My next nominee is a boring one, but a correct one. It's Austin Butler in Elvis. As tired as I am of seeing people win awards and accolades for biopics, if Austin Butler wins this, I get it. He really did disappear into this Elvis movie, and I know I'm not alone in kind of having to squint at the screen when they switch to actual footage of Elvis, because he's that good. You're not quite able to tell what is Elvis and what is Austin Butler. My next nominee is Brendan Fraser in The Whale. I think he's probably the front runner for the Academy Award for this, and for good reason. Yes, his so-called comeback story is good, is nice. It's good for press, but that doesn't mean he's any less deserving. He's really good in this film. My next nominee, I really, truly can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of forget that when he tries, he's actually a pretty great actor. My next nominee is Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark in Father Stu. This one I really didn't see coming. Through all the promotional material, I thought this be, a very one-note sports type of movie. This is not what we got. Mark Wahlberg is literally transformative
in his performance. Just some really good work by Mark Wahlberg. Was not expecting it. Father Stew. So in this category, I have, of course, the two front runners for the Oscar, Austin Butler and Brendan Fraser, in common with the Academy Awards. And my own personal winner, my favorite performance for all of last year, is Brendan Fraser in The Whale.
Do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing.
And finally, the big one. These are my nominees for my favorite movie of the year. I'm going to limit myself to 5 actual nominees. I know the Oscars does 10 now. I'm going to keep it at 5, but of course I'm going to throw a couple honorable mentions in there as well, so it evens out a little bit. My honorable mentions, and it is worth noting, these are, strictly live action films, maybe a Chippendale, maybe a Marcel. The Shell slips in there otherwise. These are my favorite live action films of last year. These are my honorable mentions for that category. 3,000 Years of Longing, directed by George Miller. Top Gun Maverick, directed by Joseph Kosinski. And Bullet Train, directed by David Leitch. And these are my nominees for favorite movie of 2022, favorite movie of the year. Now this, unlike all the other categories, I'm going to go in order. I'm going to go 5-1. These are my 5 favorite live action movies of the year. Number 5, All Quiet on the Western Front, directed by Edward Berger. This is not an easy watch. This is not a fun watch. It's a necessary watch. I'm glad this movie exists. It does a great job of, through the action on screen and through the characters' eyes, showing you what war is, showing you a different perspective of war, perhaps, that you haven't seen before. And it kind of lets you decide how to feel about that. Now, if you feel anything but bad, you might have missed something, but the film's not going to be the one to tell you that. I will. Number 4, Armageddon Time, directed by James Gray. I like that this film, very similarly to All Quiet on the Western Front, actually, kind of just presents the world as it is, and it lets the audience decide how to feel about the information that you're being presented with. I think having this story through the eyes of a child, through the lens of childhood, only makes that story that they're presenting much, much stronger. I think this was a great movie. I think it didn't get seen by enough people. I think it didn't get nominated for enough things. And so I will do what I can to sing the praises of Armageddon Time. Number 3, The Whale, directed by Darren Aronofsky. This film is endeared to me very personally for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into here. Just know that it is. Even if you're not a person who has a personal connection to this movie, I think there's a lot of value to be gained by watching this. Watching things that most people would honestly probably rather ignore. Number 2, and very nearly number 1. This was basically a coin flip when it came down to it. This was my most watched film of last year. It was RRR, directed by S.S. Rajamouli. A true cinematic bright spot of the last year. My own personal introduction to Indian cinema, probably a lot of people's introduction to cinema or Indian cinema, and what an introduction it was. It was my most viewed film of last year because I kept wanting to show all of my friends this insane, this fun movie, this new thing that we hadn't had any reference for before. That's why I kept watching it, and each time I watched it, I loved it all the same each time. And finally, no real surprise here if you've even paid half attention to this video so far. My favorite film of last year is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, directed by the Daniels, Daniel Scheinert, and Daniel
Thank you for coming. One more time. That's very funny. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
尽管离家让我心碎，我想告诉你，如果有来生，我还是会选择和你一起报税， 开心一点。
I knew when I was sitting in the theater that I was seeing something special, something I had never seen before and may never see again. Exciting, but deeply personal, a host of fantastic performances. It's just beautiful. It really lives up to its title. And I just can't wait to see it lose the Oscar to The Fabelmans. See you then.